Everything I do with great joy and satisfaction for the good of the Church. And everything that is done is a great joy and comfort to me, because something is being done for the good of Christ's Church. I like to think about Saint Leopold Mandic, a man who, like me, came from a mixed background, where there were Orthodox, Catholics, and Muslims. His words really made an impression on me when he said, "Well, I'm back. I've returned in obedience to my superiors. But in the confessional, I will do everything I can for the unity of the Christians. I don't think any differently, because we too are in a mixed region of Catholics, Orthodox and Muslims. So I took the motto for myself, that we may be all one. Ut unum sint."
Ut unum sint.
In the cathedral in Strumica, one of the most touching moments of Holy Week is taking place. The Apostolic Exarch of the Eastern Rite of the Catholic Church of Macedonia, Kiro Stoyanov, begins the liturgical washing of the feet of his congregation. The symbolic value of this act, together with the bishop's energy and charisma, are the main stimulations to this small Catholic community. Father Zoran says that the appointing of this bishop sparked off a more fruitful phase for the Catholic Church in this Balkan state.
In 1994, when he came here to Macedonia as a priest, that's when all these activities that we are talking about today began. That's when the priests started to meet together. Then young priests started to come along. Even as an auxiliary bishop, he used to dedicate a lot of time to candidates for the priesthood, as well as already ordained priests. And even today, he just gets into his car and drives into one of the surrounding villages and walks around chatting to the people. At 40 he became a bishop, and even at that young age he convinces the people with his charisma and his simplicity that their bishop is very close to them. It's important to mention here too that he is the first member of the Macedonian people to partake in the Episcopal Assembly of the Catholic Church in over 104 years.
U zboru biskupa Katoličke crkve nakon 104 godine.
Bishop Kiro Stoyanov is holding his bishop's mitre in one of the most difficult moments of the Catholic Church in this area. The Republic of Macedonia, as a new independent state, began with the disbanding of Yugoslavia. Surrounded by not the most well-intentioned neighbours such as Greece, having faced Albanian rising nationalism, Macedonia is now going through crucifixion in its economic affairs. A large number out of the 2 million inhabitants live on the verge of poverty. Apart from the turbulent political activities at state level and their difficult economic situation, a lot of pressure is put on the relationship between other denominations, especially the Orthodox Macedonian Church. However, Bishop Kiro Stoyanov believes that local misunderstandings are not and should never be allowed to be a reflection of the relationship between these two great Christian religions.
Sometimes there are some local misunderstandings, such as the one in Sekirnik, Maybe the solving of that problem dragged on for too long. However, most sincerely, I can say that even there, we found a common ground. We solved it together with the cooperation of the Macedonian Orthodox Church. They were slightly against us building the church on the site that the previous one was burnt down on. At one stage, a Catholic and an Orthodox one stood together on that site. Our church was destroyed by one individual, an enemy who hated the Catholic Church. Anyway, today on that site, in that village, a new Catholic church stands, and there's an Orthodox one there too. Last year the church had its dedication ceremony. The whole situation is normalized now, and it's as if the conflict never took place. The whole thing was caused by a few individuals who are ashamed of themselves now. We're Christians, of course, and Christian love is above all that.
Danas pomalo se onako stide, međutim, naravno, mi smo kršćani I kršćanska ljubav je ipak iznad svega.
Bishop Kiro Stoyanov finds the best inspiration to fight for the unity of Christians from the example of his own hometown.
Potičem iz jedne sredine gdje je 100% katolička.
I come from a village that is completely Catholic. We are surrounded by Orthodox villages, but as a child I never experienced any conflict between Orthodox and Catholics. My first 4 years of elementary school were in my own home village, Radovo. I attended the higher classes in another village where the children came from 3 surrounding villages. Never did I see a fight, because some were Catholic and some were Orthodox.
Zato što smo neki bili katolici ili neki pravoslavci. Čak kao dete sjećam se da su mnogi pravoslavci
As a child, I can remember that some of the Orthodox even came to our church every week, not only for Mass, but also to baptize their children. They partook in the devotions together with us. So, as a child, I experienced ecumenism among us. With regard to the priests, I never saw any conflict between them, although I never saw any great cooperation between them either.
Neki sukob, ali niti neka veća suradnja.
The bishop's invitation to unity and mutual ecumenist initiatives wasn't without response. In the little town of Ohrid, the cradle of Christianity in these parts, the Catholic and Orthodox churches try to follow the ecumenist incentive by embarking on joint ventures in projects that are important for the whole community. One such project is founding a daycare centre for children who suffer from cerebral palsy. It takes place in the parish of St. George, but the financing and organisation is the work of Father Stjepan Kushan from the local Catholic parish. Father Dima has very positive reports about this project of ecumenical participation.
This project is very significant. There are 15 regular attendants who come here every day. They have lunch here, they are brought here, and they return home by taxi. All of them are worked with according to their capabilities. They teach them, they exercise with them, they have fun. Some of them have even learned to use a computer. This spending time together has become something that for them is irreplaceable. When 3 months of a summer break have passed by, they can hardly wait for us to start back at our centre. They call it the happy corner.
Едва чека да се вратат назад во ова местенце и го нарекоја веселото капче, весели кутак.
Ако Бог да, и далje ćemo zajedno.
With God's help, we will continue to work together. Because in my parish, I don't have the infrastructure for such an undertaking. And anyway, it wouldn't be good for it to be here with us, because it would look like we were competing. They have everything here. Here's the kitchen, the dining room, the women who work here. all the infrastructure for such a project, and I don't see any better partner than them. Apart from that, they allow us to upset their everyday peace. With these children, with their lessons of foreign languages, catechism for the adults, and for the children, I brought them a lot of trouble, and they never complained, so I'm very grateful to them.
The psychologist Daniela Blażewska is the one who is best able to evaluate this interconfessional cooperation, being closely involved in the project.
This cooperation between the Orthodox and Catholic churches annoys some people, but for the most part, people are happy. Among them, there are those who are afraid that the Catholic Church will take away some of the Orthodox congregation. I see the work of Father Dime from the parish of St. George, as well as that of Father Kushan from the Catholic Church in Ohrid, as something enormous and significant for our town and for the Orthodox and Catholic communities too. They've been collaborating for years now, and they are good friends because they have a lot in common in many areas.
On this archaeological site, not far from the town of Ohrid, lived the first Christians in this Macedonian area, and 12 centuries later we can still see the well-cared-for remains of the monastery and church which St. Clement, a disciple of Cyril and Method, probably built somewhere around the end of the 8th century. St. Clement, together with his brother St. Naum, organized the church in Macedonia and introduced the use of the local language in liturgy and founded schools. He organized an archdiocese which today takes in the whole of Macedonia. The high point of medieval Macedonian history was the inauguration of the independent Macedonian state under the Emperor Samuil. Historical sources confirm that Pope Gregory V crowned the Emperor Samuil around the year 1000, and in doing that gave legality to his state in harmony with the rest of medieval society.
Right up to today, I've yet to find any document stating that Macedonia ever cut off this liaison or their relationship with the Holy See in Rome. The only thing that the Macedonian historians might want to hush up, but maybe this is wrong, is that Macedonia up till the 8th century belonged to the tradition of the Western Church. All the basilicas which we have discovered from early Christianity here in Macedonia confirm that here it was the Roman tradition that existed.
With the schism of the Church here in 1054, the influence of the Catholic Church began to weaken. In the year 1393, the Turks took over most of the Macedonian territory. The Archbishop of Skopje back then confirmed loyalty to the Turkish Sultan, and the extension of the territory of the diocese was handed over to him in gratitude. With the century-long lobbying of the Orthodox Patriarch, the territory eventually dissolved, and the disorder within church hierarchy, as well as growing corruption, led the Sublime Porte to give in to the constant demands of the Greek episcopate and let the Archdiocese of Skopje be absorbed by the Patriarchs of Constantinople. In that act, the activities of the Catholic Church in Macedonia came to an end for a long period of time. Thanks to this complication, the continuity of the Macedonian Catholic Church is very often disputed. Today, the Macedonian Catholic Church unites two institutions within itself and through its leader, Bishop Kiro Stoyanov, the Apostolic Exarchate for the Catholic Eastern Rite, with its seat in Strumica, and the Diocese of Skopje with its seat in the capital city of Macedonia. the majority of Catholics belonging to the Eastern Rite live in the area surrounding Strumica and number about 15,000.
Danas možemo biti zahvalni što se tiče
We should be really grateful today for the Apostolic Exarchate, because we are living a reawakening within the Church, both in the pastoral of the faithful as well as in spiritual vocations. Today we have 10 students of theology who are studying abroad, because we don't have a theology faculty in Macedonia. We also have 3 seminarians in the Pauline Classical Gymnasium in Subotica.
In the village of Radovo, 15 kilometers from Strumica, the biggest Catholic parish of the Apostolic Exarchate, Bishop Kiro Stoyanov was born. It was there, in his birthplace, that he fulfilled his priestly work for the first time. They clearly showed his brother, Father Zoran, that their old parish priest, who today is their bishop, would be a hard act to follow.
Even today, when I go to do something, the parishioners often say to me, "Well, that isn't the way Father Kiro did it. He used to do it this way." They still call him Father Kiro from back in the times when he was their parish priest. I have to admit that I arrived to a parish that was already very well organized.
The rest of the Catholic community, made up of immigrants from ex-Yugoslavia and Albania, about 5,000 of them, are spread out throughout Macedonia. Fate decided that even a group of Polish women found their place in the open arms of the Church here. When they became wives of the Macedonians, they found themselves far away from their homeland and in the heart of the Orthodox Church. Elizabeth Barakowska is from Kraków, came to Skopje around the beginning of the 60s. Her initial enthusiasm was replaced by astonishment.
In Poland, and especially in Kraków, there is a church on almost every corner. To go to a church early in the morning, or at midday, or at 1 p.m., or at 7 in the evening is not a problem. When I first came here, there was only one little church, the Church of St. Joseph, in which there was only one Mass in the morning and one in the evening, to which the faithful came from the whole of Skopje and all the surrounding areas. And that was very hard for me to accept. That's when I realized how little we appreciate things until we lose them. Luckily, the cathedral was built later, and that brought us all a lot of joy.
Father Anton Sirimotic, once parish priest of the parish in Skopje and today head of Caritas in Macedonia, gladly tells us about the strength of the faith of these women.
Those Polish women remained staunch in their faith and brought up their children in the self-same faith. What's really interesting is the fact that the Macedonian husbands are also often in church. They bring their wives by car, and then they come into the church themselves. Of course, they're still Macedonian and Orthodox, but still a spiritual dimension has developed within them thanks to their contact with the Catholic Church.
The fact that the Catholic Church is the smallest denomination doesn't prevent them working both for their own church as well as for the others. The best example of that is the care that the Macedonian Catholic Church offers to the biggest Roma Gypsy community in Europe.
Prije potresa koji je bio 1963. godine,
Before the earthquake, that was back in 1963, the Gypsies were scattered in different parts of the city in smaller groups. They lived in slums, in barracks, in standby shacks, and during the earthquake, they were badly hit there. After the earthquake, they were concentrated in one of the Skopje suburbs called Shotorizaria, or Shutka for short. What's worst of all about them is their illiteracy. We're not just talking about an economic poverty, but a spiritual poverty too. We're trying to help them with the economic poverty too. We give them food, clothing and other things. But we saw that instinctively you cannot rise above that situation unless you create intellectuals within their own people who will pull them out of that hell that they are in. That's why we opted for educating the children and helping them in their learning.
na školovanje djece, na pomoć u učenju.
To this appeal of Macedonian Caritas, members of the Church responded trying to pass on their skill and knowledge to the young people of the Roma community. The teacher, Elizabeth Barakowska, works with the youngest members.
Było mało trudno za to, że ja wpadł
It was a little bit unusual for me, because it was the first time in my life that I had met such a big Roma community. For example, in Poland, there are very few of them. But here in Shotorizaria, we have the biggest concentration of them in Europe. Here, there are 25,000 of them, and it was very strange for me. But, little by little, I got to know them and saw that they were cheerful and welcoming, that they want to be helped, and that they have good hearts. Working with them gives me deep satisfaction, not just to me, but to my working colleagues too. I'm really happy here with them.
Srećna sam koga sam s njih.
Just as the Good Shepherd Kiro Stoyanov circulates and looks after his flock, his imperative is to help seek out, to get to know and to comfort his community, wherever they may be and however many they may be. That's how he came to celebrate Mass with the 15 Catholics in the town of Bitola, in the southernmost part of Macedonia. This sort of simple approach is what contributed to the fact that all the citizens respect him regardless of religious denomination.
Ali narod je u Makedoniji prihvatio njega kao eto.
The people of Macedonia receive him very well as the Catholic Bishop of Macedonia. It's interesting that on television they call him the Macedonian Bishop. The Orthodox bishops are Macedonian too, but this title is used exclusively when relating to him. Despite the surroundings and the negativities in our locality, there are an awful lot of beautiful things about Macedonia, for the Catholics and the priests, for the faithful and for the bishop himself, even though he has to do everything himself, because there is no one by his side to do the work for him. Or rather, there are a few, but it's really very few compared with what the other Catholic bishops have throughout the world. He worked his situation to his advantage and is making big progress.
Imaju katolički biskupi po svijetu, ali za sad ja Mislim da se on dobro snašao i dobro napreduje.
Otkad sam postao biskupom,
Of course, when I became a bishop, the horizon opened up even wider than before. We need to build churches.
Božjih hramova. Bar
From this position now, I can see that the church is progressing. It's growing and developing, and people are more and more attracted to it.
On Easter night in the cathedral at Strumica, the vigil light will pass like a wave through the congregation. It is as if that joyful symbol of Christ's resurrection is lighting up a better and brighter future for this little brave Catholic community and its Bishop Kiro Stoyanov.
ljudi gde su nekada bili kao katolici,
People who used to be Catholic
komunizma,
and who became indifferent during times of communism have begun to wake up. We get more and more requests to build churches, God's dwelling places, so that the people can gather together for prayer. In that area, we are progressing. However, we don't want to ignore the living church. Buildings are useless without the living church.
Božji hramovi, ako mi nemamo živu crkvu. Otvori se vrato, ide car slaven. Otvori se vrato, ide car slaven. Gospod silen i svemoćan, to je car slaven. Ne kažem da smo mi dosegli vrhunac.
I'm not saying that we've reached the top yet. We haven't. But, as we can see, the church is certainly growing.
Da raste i da se razvija.
Voskresinji iz mrtvih boju,